Hi, everybody. My name is Paulo Garcia. I work as the admissions coordinator in Florida for the graduate program, and I'll be moderating the panel with members of the admissions committee. So today we have Dr. Laura Solt from the Department of Immunology and Microbiology at UF Scripps Biomedical Research in Florida, as well as Professor Wiseman from the Department of Molecular Medicine at Scripps Research in California. So if you wouldn't mind, Laura and Luke, just talk a little bit about perhaps your labs and the type of research that you do, and then we can jump in and answer some of the questions submitted by the registrants.
Okay, I'll go first. So yeah, as Paolo said, I'm an associate professor in the Department of Immunology and Microbiology. My lab is focused on studying autoimmune diseases, particularly specific cells that drive autoimmune diseases, and then understanding the different transcription factors that regulate these particular cells, and whether then we can develop drugs or small molecules to target those transcription factors for therapeutic purposes. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
Yeah, my name's Luke. I'm in the molecular medicine department, and our program really is focused on understanding how cells respond to stress and figuring out ways we can hijack those pathways to intervene in different types of diseases. We're quite multidisciplinary. We have people in my lab working on everything from structure biology with cryo-EM and cryo-electron tomography all the way up to animal models. So pretty broad.
Thank you both. So we can start with the first question. I'm going to start with one of the ones that Karen had mentioned from the Q&A, because it's also a question that was asked. Should students indicate which PI they want to work with at the time of the application? And a follow-up question to that, should students reach out to faculty members before applying?
I say it's in your best interest to write in your statement of purpose the faculty that you're interested in working with and why, because it helps it stand out and it shows that you've done your research and your homework into Scripps. So I definitely think that that's a very good idea. And then reaching out, I mean, it doesn't hurt either, in my personal opinion. I think that's also helpful. Luke?
I'll add that it's usually good not just to write one person down, to be honest. There's a lot of reasons why maybe you come and you realize that you know, it's like the environment in that lab isn't what you want for a lot of reasons. I mean, some environments are just different. So you might find that you don't really feel like the science, or you don't like sort of the mentorship style or something, and you want to go to a different lab. So make sure to write multiple. We look for that on admissions committees, so you're not really zeroed in on just one person. It definitely is worth reaching out. I have to say, a lot of people reach out to me, and I generally say I'll talk to you at the interview weekend. But you know, it's definitely worth reaching out to get names. So I get a lot of emails, and I'm you know, generally of the type where I'll probably just wait to the interview weekend to reach out. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you flatter me the right way, and I will respond by having because a nice way of saying it. But in general, it's definitely good to reach out to get your name out there. Something we look for. I know I look for people that reached out to me when the applications come in and I start looking through.
I do as well. It kind of just puts a little personal touch on the application, and I can connect a face to a name.
So second question, as reviewers, what are you looking for in potential applicants?
So I want to first of all put out there that we look at the application like holistically, so we don't focus in on like one particular thing, like in specific criteria that you absolutely have to have, but it's good to have like a really well-rounded application. But what we definitely do look for in students are those who are very curious and are very passionate about science. Like in their statement of purpose, they really tell us, you know, who they are and what they're doing and why they want to do science. And then in their research statement, they're really telling us not just the intricacies of their research, like, oh, I did PCR and I saw this. They're telling us about the big picture questions that they're addressing in their current research and why it's important that they're doing what they're doing. So those like broader schemes and themes are what we're really looking for. And also whether you've overcome, like, I think this is a question actually on the application, but like, you know, any sort of adversity you had to have overcome and how you might have overcome it, like that, those types of things, to see how, you know, tough you are, basically.
I want to underscore the idea that it's a holistic approach. We're looking at the entire application because we're going to get questions here in a second about what's a good GPA and things like this. That doesn't actually, it depends. It depends on the context. Research experience is a must. That's the one thing I'll say as an absolute. You have to have some experience. And if you don't have experience, I think it's a good thing to go out and work for a year in a research lab in either academia or industry to get experience. First of all, that just tells us you know what you're getting into, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the last thing you want to come and realize science isn't what you thought it was. It's not like on TV, right? Everybody's probably been in lab, but it's not like you just go and you get a magical result and you're done. It's very different than that. So it's important to understand the environment. That's the one thing I would say is a must is research experience. But apart from that, we look at everything. We look at, if you have lower grades, maybe we're going to look at your experience and ask, is it stronger? Do you have strong letters? Do you have really good understanding of what you're writing? But it all kind of sort of balances itself. So that's the most important thing. Really tell us who you are. And keep in mind, we're reading hundreds of these applications. What are you going to do to stand out? And I can tell you, to this day, I remember the personal statements that were written that were just the ones that blew me away. I know who they are. Some of the students are here actually. And I've even told them that they're the ones that I really remember because they're just so well done and it's such a compelling story. So I think that's something I really want to see because we're reading hundreds of applications. It's a lot of work, and entertain us a little bit. It really shows who you are. I think is probably the best way to say it. But it is holistic. We look at everything, and we read every application. That's the other thing that's kind of unique. There is no triage decision. Every application is read by 3 people, and so that's 3 people's chance. You got to catch their eyes. So that's the goal.
Yep.
So you all addressed the sort of GPA and how you look into it. And now that the GRE is not required.
I just want to say actually one thing about the GPA. If you think you have a low GPA, because say your freshman year you had some sort of health issue or something like that, you want to address in your personal statement, why your GPA might be what it is. I mean, don't just kind of gloss over it. Tell us, what happened, so that we can get an idea about, your aptitude. I mean, so like I said, even though we look at everything as a whole, if there seems to be a deficiency, if you think there's a deficiency, tell us what happened so that we know. And it will probably help you in the long run.
It really will. It really will.
So yeah, since the GRE is not required, do you have any recommendations if an applicant should submit it to supplement their application, or if they've already taken it for other programs, if they should submit it for consideration for their Scripps Research application?
Only if they're good scores.
Yeah, it can't hurt you, honestly, right? I mean, that's the way it works now. But if you have really good scores, absolutely submit it. It's just another it's another data point for us to use. So when we use holistic sort of approach, which we do, it's the more data points, the better for us. But if it's, I think that's the best thing to say.
And you both spoke a little bit about the personal statement. So one of the questions is, what type of information is best for personal statements? What other skills should we highlight there?
I mean, the short answer is.
Go ahead. Yeah, Luke, please.
Sorry. I was going to say, it's personal to you, right? I mean, we want to know who you are. I mean, there's a lot of them that read exactly the same. You can kind of see the people who just follow the formula. And that doesn't hurt you, really, to be honest. I mean, if other things look good, but if you really want to stand out, make the personal statement really personal. Make it about you. Tell us what you got into science. I mean, the story is, somebody got sick and I wanted to study science. The story was basically when I was 5 years old, I saw boys in the lab on the BI, and that's what I wanted to do. But that still tells you a little bit about sort of who I am and who I wanted to be from a younger age. Maybe it came later. You realize you want to do science. We want to get an idea of what your motivation is, and we want to see where you want to go. That's the place to describe a little bit about whose lab you might want to work in, why you want to work in those labs, show you've done your homework. So I want to see about you, and so there is no formula. I think you have to write, about who you are and what drives you.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot I basically agree with everything Luke just said. I mean, tell us about you, because we're looking at hundreds of applications, and after a while they all start to just roll into the same one. But the ones that really stand out and catch my eye, there's been a few applications that have literally had me in tears. I mean, those are the ones that stand out. So really tell me why we should care about you. and why you think you'd be a great Scripps student. So.
I will make one point about this too. Don't make it a sob story on purpose.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Not on purpose.
There's a lot of people who try to like do that, and I don't understand why. The ones that Laura's talking about are ones that didn't like say, "Woe is me, this has been very hard." It just comes apart. This is what happened. This is how I overcame it. This is how I move forward. And that's really the way to think about it. Don't try to make it a sob story to pull at heartstrings. That won't work, because we get a lot of those, frankly. We wanted to learn who you are. So right from who you are, and that's the real goal.
Yeah, what resonates with me is, how you overcame that challenge and what you did with it. That was really what really gets to me then.
Yeah, that's the most important part of any challenge anyways, right? I think that's what we want to see, because that's what grad school is, to be honest. It's overcoming challenges.
It's one failed experiment after another. So you just need to learn how to overcome that. Yeah.
So another question is, how do you weigh applicants coming to Scripps right after undergrad versus those taking a gap year or coming back after working in industry?
I mean, the short answer is it depends on your experience. If you have really good experience in undergrad, you can come in from undergrad. There really is no real. I mean, I like I said, we look at everything. So having more experience isn't bad. If you had really good experience already, then you might be ready. There's no like one short answer for this, to be honest. It really is look at the application as a whole, and that's what we do. And so if you look really good, and you've done a lot of good work, you have good letters, maybe you have a paper in the works or done, that's great. You don't necessarily need to go do another year. Other people want to go do a year for other reasons too, just to gain a little bit more experience, or maybe they want to, earn some money for a while before they come back to grad school, where you have a stipend and everything, but still you can sort of like become more financially stable in some ways. There's lots of reasons you might want to do it. I'm not going to speculate on everything, but the point is that you should, do what you think is most appropriate for you. There's nothing wrong with doing gap years. One of the smartest people I know coming in my cohort did a gap year for the second reason I said, because he just wanted to go make a bunch of money for a little while, and then at undergrad. But he was awesome. He's amazing. He's now a professor up somewhere else, which I won't say because we're trying to recruit people here. But it's one of those things where I think it's really just up to you what you want to do.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that I have anything more to add, except what Luke already mentioned earlier is that, and I think this was one of the questions that was posted earlier, having research experience is a must. So if you come out of undergrad and you have none, go get some.
Yeah.
I'm going to shift gears here. There's a lot of questions related to the research statement. One of them is, this one's very specific. Let me pop it up right here. How do you recommend talking about your research experience, especially if a candidate is in biotech or a pharmacy company where the project details are confidential and proprietary?
Yeah, that's tricky, I have to say. And we deal with this every year. We do get this a lot, and it doesn't hurt you. I will say that we understand that things are proprietary. In general, do the best you can to be able to describe like the kind of things you've done, and the best you can to describe the purpose of those things. Like the overall goal of a company should be known, right? That's something you can usually see online. So you can at least talk around at that. And then your advisors, the people that are helping you, I guess they're called advisors still, they can also sort of write around that in a letter as well. It doesn't hurt you though to do that sort of route, to be honest. I mean, that's something we understand happens. Obviously we want more information, but we also appreciate why not. Most of us are associated with companies. So the best thing you can do is write as much as you can to make it clear that what you've actually accomplished, what you're capable of, and try to make it clear that you understand why you're doing it. Yeah.
Yep. I have nothing more to add. That was an excellent answer.
Another question related to the research statement. If my current research is quite different from my prospective research, will my lack of experience in this specific research be a drawback?
I think the general answer is no. At least it comes in the biological science. The caveat, in my opinion, is going to come if you want to go synthetic chemistry. You've never done synthetic chemistry. That could be sort of a caveat. I think there are some specialized things like that where you'll see that be it somewhat of a drawback. And again, if you feel like you don't have the experience you need to move into the area, take a year and go get the experience. I think that's not a bad thing at all. But in biology, at least, I would say that it's pretty broad, and there's enough sort of different types that generally that's less important on the more biological you get, I think is the way to say it.
I agree. I mean, Luke's right. I mean, if you want to suddenly go into synthetic chemistry and you've been like a biology major your entire life, that's going to be a bit more tricky to cross over into. We do sometimes see people completely switching fields, so they did all their research in, say, like neuroscience, and suddenly they want to go into like immunology, and that doesn't necessarily hurt you, but you need to pretty much explain why you're changing fields, even though you don't have that research experience. Like, have really good rationale for why you're going from A to B.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
This one, a bit of a broader question. How much research experience is recommended before applying to this program?
I'll let Laura go first on this.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's honestly going to depend upon the person, because some people do like, they do, if they're coming from undergrad, they'll do summer research internships, and then they do research throughout undergrad. I mean, some people didn't do very much in undergrad, but they were a technician for like 3 to 5 years or whatever. And so it honestly depends upon the person. And so we're looking at, like I said, again, the whole picture about like who you are, why you want to do this, why you're interested in this, and whether like the research you're doing, whether you understand what you're doing and how it's fitting into the big picture. So like I said, there's not one answer that I can unfortunately give you. It's really going to depend upon you and the particular application.
That's right. I will say there is sort of a minimum. We generally don't see less than a year of research.
True. Yeah.
And so you don't really see less than that. I mean, COVID made it harder, but we're kind of out of that now. I mean, COVID made something where everybody was doing bioinformatic things, and it made it very difficult, frankly. But in general, years before that, we have at least a year of experience. We also generally like to see, at least a relatively long period sustained experience. That's usually what you're in school, right? When you're actually in classes and stuff, you generally have one long experience, and then you go in the summers, like Laura was saying. But apart from that, there really isn't much to add. I mean, it really is whatever you feel like you have enough experience. I mean, that you can convince us that you're doing in your project. I think that's the real key. But I would say a year is probably about the minimum that we typically see. Is that fair, Laura? Do you think?
That's fair. I mean, because on top of it, you really need to understand what you're getting into. Because I can't tell you how many people who've come in and done their first research experience in my lab, and they're like, oh, this is nothing like what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like nonstop work, but there's a lot of incubations or something like that. Or even my own father's walked into my lab and he said, this is nothing like CSI. I'm like, no, Dad, it is nothing like CSI. Yeah, so we also want to make sure that you know what you're getting into, and that, you really want to do research. And so by having at least a year, it's telling us that you know the route that you're taking.
Switching gears again, there's a couple of questions from international applicants. Would the admissions be more competitive for international students, and how many international students are you looking to admit?
I think Dawn answered this question earlier, but basically it's the same across the board. We're looking at everyone similarly.
It's one big pile. I mean, that's the way to think about it. We have one big pile, and every application is read, the entire thing, by at least 3 people. So after that, as far as I'm too aware, we're not really that. I mean, we keep track just because but I don't think we keep track during the admissions process itself. Not that I remember, at least. We're looking international. We're just bringing in people. We're just looking for the best people we can to come to our program.
Yeah, like I said, we're looking at so many that they all start to blur together. And at a certain point, I don't really care who's from where or what. I just want the best students. And so, yeah.
There is one point that I forgot to mention with the international students, and this is related to it, and that is that international students will have to complete the TOEFL. So that is just one other point that I want to make sure that I've raised. You will have to complete the TOEFL if you are studying abroad and your institution does not have instruction in English. And there is a list of countries and how to deal with that process on our website and within the application. So there are a couple of questions about that, but hopefully I've I've addressed it. So you will have to do the TOEFL if you're an international student.
That's specifically, again, if you're not speaking English and you're at university too, right, Don?
That is correct. There has to be a formal letter from your institution indicating that instruction is done in English, and then that can be waived by the graduate office.
And I'd like to go back to the research statement topic. I have a question from a student asking how would it be best for us to discuss research that is leading to an upcoming publication if the publication may not be completed by the application deadline?
That's perfect. I mean, honestly, that's like a good situation for you because you get a chance to describe the work, the context of it, and your contributions to it. I do think the one thing I would advise you to do is don't describe it like you did all the work either, because I think that's probably, unless it's true, I guess there's cases that's true. You know, we want to know what your contribution was to the project, but that's actually a good situation. And most people will write like, you know, submitted or wherever it is in the stage, and that's fine. You know, bioarchives has made that a little bit easier for us to read if we want to go check it out ourselves. But I think in general, we also will expect to see it like also referenced in the advisor letter, which is very common too. So it doesn't feel like something that's just kind of been, you know, at some point in the distant future, we might submit a paper. But it's a good situation for you, right? If you have a paper written down, you've talked about the work, you've really structured it. That's a great way to write the research statement.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, or if you have a paper that is almost finished, but you have to finish like 1 or 2 experiments, that's actually perfect in your research statement. So you're writing about like what you did, and then you're telling us about what needs to be completed in order to make it a complete story. And so that's really telling us that you really know your project and what needs to be done in order to finish it off. And so like I said, Luke's right. That's a perfect example of a great way to do a research statement.
Yeah. Not everybody has it either, and that's okay. Don't, you know, but I think that's a good situation to be in.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have questions about this topic, but I get them on the road. Feel we can lean towards that. In regards to the interview weekends, any recommendations for students who are invited to come interview on campus, how to prepare, anything like that?
Be yourself. Yeah.
But behave. That's what I would say. I would say research the definitely look into the people that you're interviewing with, and so know what they're working on. And even though you're going to be asked who you want to interview with, you might not be interviewing with all of them, but don't question why you didn't get to talk with so and so and why you're interviewing with Professor X, because they might be on the admissions committee, and there's a reason that you're meeting with the people that you're meeting with. And so yeah, like I said, just do your homework, know that there's a rationale to who you're meeting with, really talk to the students about, you know, what life is like, graduate student life is like. And yeah, but Luke's right, be yourself.
Also, when you talk to students in the labs you're interested in, because, you know, that's a good way to sort of get an idea about what that lab environment's like. I fully accept the fact that my lab isn't for everyone. You know, not everybody, you know, likes the type of work we do, or the sort of like the type of mentorship I provide. That's fine. I want people to be successful and happy. Rotations are a great way to do that, but you can also get a little bit of information from the students beforehand as well. So it's a good opportunity to reach out to them. Students and faculty are also pretty good at, if you didn't get to meet with somebody you wanted, you know, if they're around, like when there's a part, to somebody and say, hey, can you introduce me to this person? And not a bad thing either. In fact, a lot of my students have come through that sort of route where they talk to me at the reception or whatever it is, the dinner on the Friday evening. But I also want to underline, you know, do your homework. You know the list of people you're going to meet with. Know a little bit about what they do, so you don't come into the interviews without any sort of idea. That's, you know, we respond to flattery. I think is the nicest way to say it. And so it's good to have people read our work. So come on, you know it's a little true.
No, it's 100% true. I'm not gonna lie. It's 100% true.
Last question I have that was submitted through the registrations, and looks like somebody looking to potentially a career in academia, asking you both, what is your most rewarding experience that you had in your career in academia?
I don't think I have one. I mean, there's been multiple ones for different things, like getting my first R01, that was super exciting. Like getting my first publication where I was senior author, that was rewarding. And honestly, just seeing my students just succeed, that is beyond rewarding to me as well. So like I said, I don't think I have one. I have multiple ones. I read this question earlier and it made me sit and think for a while. And like I said, I can't narrow it down to one.
It's funny, the grants and the papers, by the time I'm getting grants and papers, I'm so tired of writing the grants and papers that doesn't feel, it doesn't feel like joy. It feels like relief in a lot of ways. Not necessarily relief that we got, but relief it's off my desk now, I can move on to the next thing. The thing I get most excited about is when students come to me with a really cool idea. It's not, I mean, there's a transition during graduate school at some point. Sometimes it's second year, sometimes it's fourth year, sometime that they come into my office and they have a really good idea. And that really good idea is one that I had never thought of. It really shows me that they understand their project more than I do, which is really what it, that's how it should be at the end. And that moment that happens is probably the most exciting and rewarding thing that I do. And that's something that I wouldn't trade for anything. I think that's a lot of fun. I mean, all the other stuff you have to sort of do. Eventually you have to write the papers. You have to go through it, all the drafts, all the copy editing. And then when you think you're done, you have this version that comes to you that's already in journal format. And they say, get it back to me immediately after like 12 months of this. But so that part is just relief. But when they have the good idea that ends up being something, that's when it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, my first one, that was rewarding for me of those two. But like I said, after that, you're right. It's really, because you're right. I'm so tired of staring at this, I can't look at it anymore.
I felt that way in the first one too. I was like, I don't think I celebrated it. I just sort of was like, oh, I don't have to do this again. So.
Yeah, but no, I agree with Luke. It's students, like I said, for me, just my students being successful, whether it's they finally got something to work in the lab that they've been working on for a while, or just coming to me with an idea. But I get a lot of satisfaction out of my students just being successful in what they want to do.
Can I answer a question that's in the Q&A that I think is an important one? I see a couple questions about advisors and picking advisors during the interview weekends. You don't apply to a person, you apply to a school. And so I think it's really important to make that distinction, because when you come to a place like Scripps, you're going to see there's so many different awesome labs that you could work in. And you're not locked into anybody. Like maybe you talk to me and you really liked me, and you come to Scripps and you realize, oh man, there's so many other people here I work with. You're not locked into me. You can do whatever you want at that stage. You're applying to school. And that's why it's so important to make sure you apply to places and you interview and you go to places where there are multiple different people you'll be excited about. It's not hard to find that here, I have to say, on either campus. But I think it's a really important thing to think about. You don't have to be locked in to one person. And you can change once you get here. That's what rotations do.
I agree. Luke's right. You're applying to the program, like don't have your heart set on one particular lab, because on top of it, that lab might not even be taking students. Or you might go and rotate and you might absolutely hate it. And so, multiple labs, multiple experiences or interests. I think that's your best bet. Yeah. That was a good thing to bring up, Luke. So thank you.
Yeah, it's the last question I was going to ask, so I appreciate it. I think we can go ahead and switch over to the student panel. Laura and Luke, thank you very much for participating and answering questions from our students. I'll swing it over to Shannon, who's my counterpart in California.
Right.